Good morning, everyone. Today we will be discussing the extraordinary life and work of Artemisia Gentileschi, a remarkable Italian Baroque painter who made significant contributions to the art world, despite facing numerous challenges as a woman artist in the 17th century. Let's begin by taking a closer look at who Artemisia was. Born in 1593 in Rome, Artemisia was the daughter of renowned painter Orazio Gentileschi. She received training in her father's workshop and showed exceptional talent from a young age. In fact, Artemisia became the first woman to be accepted into the prestigious Accademia delle Arti del Disegno in Florence. However, Artemisia's life was not without its trials. In 1612, at the age of 17, she was sexually assaulted by her painting tutor, Agostino Tassi. This traumatic experience had a profound impact on her art and activism. Despite the challenges she faced, Artemisia went on to have a successful career, receiving commissions from influential patrons, such as the Medici family and King Charles of England. Artemisia was known for her skilled compositions, strong female characters, and her use of the chiaroscuro technique and dramatic lighting to convey emotion and power. She challenged conventions and paved the way for future women artists in a male-dominated field. Now let's take a journey through Artemisia's life and the key events that shaped her both personally and professionally. As we delve deeper into Artemisia's work, we can see that several important themes emerge. One of the most prominent themes is that of trauma, resilience, and healing. Artemisia's own experience of sexual assault and the ensuing public trial had a significant impact on her art. Her paintings often depict scenes of violence and trauma, echoing her own experiences. However, Artemisia used her art as a means of processing her trauma and asserting her voice. Her works serve as a testament to her resilience and strength as she reclaimed agency and asserted her identity as an artist. Furthermore, Artemisia's paintings often depict women's resilience and strength in the face of adversity. Her female characters are frequently shown in moments of triumph or defiance, such as in her famous works Judith slaying Holofernes and Susanna and the Elders. These paintings celebrate women's courage and strength, even in the most challenging circumstances. Another important theme in Artemisia's work is the portrayal of the biblical heroine, Judith. In the book of Judith, she is depicted as a symbol of righteousness, taking justice into her own hands. Artemisia's portrayal of Judith can be seen as semi-autobiographical, with Judith representing Artemisia herself, and Holofernes symbolizing her assaulter, Agostino Tassi. The stark difference in Artemisia's portrayal of Judith and her handmaiden, compared to the works of other artists like Caravaggio, highlights her unique perspective and the influence of her own experiences. Artemisia's depiction of Judith resonates with modern solidarity among sexual assault survivors. It is important to consider the context in which Artemisia created her art, a patriarchal society where the art world was dominated by men. As we can see in this powerful painting, Artemisia Gentileschi masterfully depicts the biblical story of Judith, a young widow who saves her people by seducing and beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes. However, Artemisia's interpretation of this scene is unlike any other. Firstly, let's consider the symbolism and significance of this painting in relation to Artemisia's own life experiences. As mentioned earlier, Artemisia was sexually assaulted by her painting tutor, Agostino Tassi, when she was just 17 years old. The ensuing trial was a public and humiliating ordeal for Artemisia, during which she was subjected to physical torture to determine the truthfulness of her testimony. In Judith slaying Holofernes, we can see a reflection of Artemisia's own trauma and her desire to assert power over her abusers. Judith, in this context, can be seen as a representation of Artemisia herself, while Holofernes symbolizes Tasi. The graphic violence depicted in the scene echoes the emotional and physical violence that Artemisia experienced during her assault and the trial. However, this painting is not just a representation of trauma. It is also a testament to Artemisia's resilience and strength. By portraying Judith as a powerful and determined figure, Artemisia reclaims agency and asserts her identity as a survivor and an artist. The act of painting itself becomes a means of processing her trauma and expressing her emotions on her own terms. The attention to detail in this painting is also significant. Artemisia depicts Judith and her handmaiden with a sense of determination and strength, their faces focused on the task at hand. This is in stark contrast to many other depictions of this scene by male artists, who often portray Judith as a seductress or a passive figure. Moreover, the use of chiaroscuro and dramatic lighting in this painting adds to its emotional intensity. The stark contrast between light and shadow emphasizes the violence of the act and the psychological depth of the characters. This technique, which Artemisia was known for, allows her to convey a sense of urgency and power that draws the viewer into the scene. In conclusion, Judith slaying Holofernes is a powerful example of how Artemisia Gentileschi used her art to process her own trauma, assert her voice, and celebrate the resilience and strength of women in the face of adversity.
Some of her works that are considered to reflect her trauma from the assault were Susanna and the Elders and Lucretia, both depicting women in distress, which is an uncommon thing to see in the art world from this time period. Women were usually depicted as soft and inviting in artworks by men, making these paintings in particular stand out. Patriarchy in the art world. It was a male-dominated field with limited opportunities for women artists at this time. In fact, some of her best work was accredited to her father, since he taught her how to paint in a time where male masters were not allowed to tutor female students. Her introduction to the art world brought a new perspective on female depiction in art, as we saw with the previous paintings. Women were often excluded for formal art education in institutions, and prejudice against women's abilities and intellect was very common. So, with the previously mentioned works of Susanna and the Elders and Lucretia, the dates signed on them are actually about a year before her trial. A working theory is that they were painted after her trial, but the dates were changed so they would be considered separate from that entire experience to protect her reputation. Men often painted Susanna as a figure of bewitching beauty who could not help but be conquered, but Artemisia depicts her in distress from male treatment. She understood consent in a way that male counterparts never could. This of course leads to the idea that an art world made entirely of men not only lacks intersectionality, but dimension of any sort of perspectives. So, this brought a new perspective to bodily art as well, and while Susanna is depicted mostly nude, there is nothing inherently sexual about it. It is simply her form. So, lack of recognition and attribution for women artists. Women's contributions were often overlooked or credited towards male peers, and historical records and art scholarships are often biased towards male artists. Challenging in balancing artistic pursuits and societal expectations, women are often expected to prioritize domestic roles over professional ambitions, and there was limited access to resources, networks, and patronage. Like many female artists of her time, she was never considered great and is only now recently gaining the recognition she deserves. In terms of relation to our class material, the first thing I had thought of was the No Great Women Artists piece by Nochlin. Contemporary feminist art is a powerful cultural mirror in terms of how it has changed over time. So Artemisia has only recently gained the recognition she deserves, like so many female artists of her time. As discussed in class, Linda Nochlin's Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists explores the reasons why this phenomenon occurs, and she mentions Artemisia by name in the essay. Artists like Shirin Neshat and challenge assumptions about political categorization and cultural identity. They encourage critical thinking on social and political issues, promoting change. Feminist art challenges societal norms and promotes gender equality. Tacy Mosseth's work addresses issues of adolescence, domestic violence, and homophobia, as written about by Chadwick. Collective action by women in the US and the UK in the 1970s to protest exclusion from the male-dominated institutions and exhibitions, also written by Chadwick.
Artemisia faced numerous challenges as a woman in a male-dominated field. Her work was often attributed to her father or other male artists, and she had to navigate a society that prioritized women's domestic roles over their professional ambitions. However, what sets Artemisia apart is her ability to use her art as a means of resisting these limitations and asserting her own voice. This is particularly evident in her depictions of strong female characters, such as Judith, who take justice into their own hands and challenge the patriarchal power structures of their time. In this way, Artemisia's work can be seen as a precursor to the feminist art movement of the 1970s, which we have also studied in this class. Artists like Tracy Moffat and Shirin Nesha, who use their art to address issues of gender, identity, and power, owe a great deal to pioneers like Artemisia, who paved the way for women artists to express themselves and challenge the status quo. Another interesting connection we can make is to the concept of the male gaze, which we have discussed in relation to the representation of women in art. Many of the depictions of female figures in art history have been created by male artists for a presumed male audience, resulting in the objectification and sexualization of women's bodies. Artemisia, however, subverts this male gaze by presenting female figures who are in control of their own narratives and destinies. Her women are not passive objects of desire, but rather active agents who assert their power and agency in the face of adversity. This subversion of the male gaze can also be seen in the work of contemporary feminist artists like Cindy Sherman and Barbara Kruger, who use their art to critique and challenge the ways in which women are represented in media and popular culture. In conclusion, studying Artemisia Gentileschi's life and work in the context of this class has provided us with a rich and nuanced understanding of the ways in which art can serve as a tool for resistance, healing, and social change. Her experiences and her art resonate with the themes and concepts we have explored.
Thank you so much for listening. These are our citations. We hope you learned as much as we did.